Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Out of the Park 23 with the Minnesota Twins. This is our playoffs episode, where in our first series after we did the preview at the end of the last one with Boston, we went ahead and played out those two games, which went pretty well for us. We jumped on the starters both games. Game one was interesting because you can see this action right at the beginning of we get the 3-0 lead and then they jump on Syndergaard in the third, which created one of those, as you can see here, was an error that did have that happen. But so we're tied 3-3 after 3 innings, and then getting that big 4-run lead is what then let me kind of keep Syndergaard in the game. Jorge Polanco was huge in this game, hitting home runs in his first two at bats, and just kind of giving me enough of a lead to kind of let Syndergaard then settle in and mostly then save the bullpen. He goes 7 1/3 innings, gives up 4 runs, but at the point where he gives up this last run is at the point of the game where even then it's 7-4, and then we were going, and that was kind of, I believe what happened there is we give up, Bogarts gets a hit, to get, let's see, no, I actually don't think, because Bogarts got his 2 RBIs early on, but Bogarts gets on base as well as Story, and then we've got the two lefties then coming up in Casas and Devers. So we go to Thielbar, who does allow an inherited runner, I believe, to score. Yep. But gets through the inning, and then we just have this massive bottom of the eighth. It becomes a 12-4 game, like the final, which is nice because it then lets me kind of see what I can get out of Maeda, which is definitely an interesting part of this playoffs, is now going to be what can I get out of him. And it was a 1-2-3 top of the ninth, as well. So that was good. Then Trey Mancini hit a home run as well as the two from Polanco. He has a very good series for us, because again it's the two lefties. We was Sale and then James Paxton. If we go to game 2 here, where we knock him around as well. And Mancini, I believe, hits. No, he does. He hits the home run off of Castillo. But I mean, we do pretty good damage to the lefties in both games. We have the huge 5th inning, which isn't even off of. Well, starts off against Paxton, and then we just smash around the two relievers they bring in. This is one of the most confusing things I've ever seen, honestly, is after Chris Sale gets destroyed, gives up 7 runs in 2 2/3 the day before, they then bring him in as a reliever. Like, I don't understand. Paddock pitched pretty well for me after the 2 early runs, but like I'm not gonna pull my starter after 2 innings. Because they went back to back on him. Devers and Martinez hit back-to-back home runs in the 2nd inning, but then he's, pretty good after that. Corey Kluber got hurt, which that I believe it's a ruptured tendon in his finger, up for 4 months, so he's done for the playoffs. Then I do a very dumb thing, which is bring in Joe Ryan, because I'm just going, herp, I'm going to have fun playing my starting pitchers as relievers in the playoffs, before then realizing, oh wait, because I used my first 2 starters and he would probably be my 4th starter, that how much is he now going to be available to pitch in game 2 against Houston, which is where I would want him. So I do have a plan for that, to try to minimize my mistake that I made there, but which I think will work out okay. But yeah, so that was a nice self-inflicted error in a 12-2 game. But Jorge Polanco is named the series MVP. I mean, hits 500, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs. And we get Houston, where if we look at them, it's going to be something similar to Boston, I think. Where Boston was very much a good offense, but the pitching is kind of suspect. And we teed off on their pitching in the first round. And I think we're going to need to do the same to Houston because I think they're going to score more than the 6 runs that Boston scored on us in 2 games, especially because we don't get Syndergaard and we don't get Paddock for like that. Those 2 only can pitch 2 games in this series, more than likely. I'm gonna look and see if I can maybe throw Syndergaard in game 2. I actually might look to do that because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, 4 days rest to potentially come back for game 5 is certainly something I'm gonna need to think about. Is 2 games of a maybe can't give me as many innings as the 7 1/3 he gave me in game 1 against Boston, but he's the best pitcher on the team. So this is certainly something that I have to think about. Of basically, is this Syndergaard here? Of do I do kind of this schedule, but this is Syndergaard instead of Winder? And we'll see how Josh Winder does in game 1 to potentially bring him back for a game 5 if he does super well. But I mean, this is a really good lineup. Where if we look here, and that's 5 guys that are 15% above the league average or more. And this is all people who played a lot of games, so this isn't fluky. And Bregman, I think, is better than a 95 OPS plus player. So, like, this is a concern to me as well. So, yeah, Kyle Tucker's been a monster. Yeah, so, I mean, this is a scary lineup, especially with Altuve and Tucker having, like, Altuve being a righty and Tucker being a lefty means that it kind of limits which I can do to that. I mean, we'll kind of see what are Altuve's splits. Yeah, I mean, just absolutely destroying lefties makes it hard to want to bring in a lefty to deal with Brantley and Tucker. Ooh, I mean, let's see. Oh, let's go ahead and do the splits here. I mean, Tucker just kind of hit everybody, but Brantley didn't hit lefties at all. So that'll have to be a decision of, are we willing to potentially get hurt by Altuve to get good matchups with Brantley and Tucker. But yeah, so that's sort of where we're looking at hitting wise. I mean, this is a very good lineup with a lot of people that can hurt you. And then on the pitching side, it feels sort of like it's McCullers and question marks. Garcia's been pretty good lately, but I mean, a 4.6 ERA. The FIP's even only 4.2. But he's been pitching better of late. So, I mean, that's, like, concerning, but I mean, McCullers is really the guy where if I can get one win against McCullers, I will like my chances in this series. Because we're going to get him in Game 1 and Game 5 because they were able to be fully rested, and he's going to have five days of rest. Whereas if I go with a Syndergaard in Game 2 and Game 5 strategy, that's only a 4-day rest. Oh, wow, this is Verlander out of the bullpen? Interesting. This is very weird. I mean, he wasn't good this year. So, does that make sense? Brian Abreu. And there's definitely some good arms, especially in the back part of this bullpen. Presley is scary. Hunter Brown looks like he was very good this year. Number 24 prospect in baseball, who's probably going to become a starter for them, I would guess, next year. But, I mean, for now, this is a concerning guy. Like, this is a team that I think we're going to need to get to the starters. Because if I'm Houston, I'm probably only throwing these 3 guys. out of my bullpen as much as possible. Or I mean, I guess even Montero was pretty. Oh, he might have been lucky though. So yeah, I mean, like I'm trying to throw these three as much as possible, and that's scary to me. Though, yeah, and I mean, Hunter Brown's 50 stamina means this is a guy who could come out and throw 3 innings pretty easily against me. One thing to note here is that every bullpen arm they have is a righty, which is really nice for me with having outfielders like Kepler and like Kirilov. Means I'm not going to get as punished there by potentially them being able to bring in the lefties against those guys. So that's something that's nice that's playing in our favor. But I think, let's see. Can I look at record versus an individual team? I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I'm not sure. Let's see, I mean, I can kind of do this manually pretty quick. Okay, so we went 1-2 against them in August. Then I think we play them in May. So we went 2-4 against Houston this year. So like I definitely, and that's probably why they were the 2 seed and we were the 3 coming into this. The other thing to note for me coming into this series is Duran is fully available. Because I had the 2 blowout wins, I did not have to use him at all, which is very good for my bullpen. And I think that helps us a lot. The game plan for Joe Ryan, if I do decide to, and I might even do this regardless of whether or not I throw him in game 2 or not, is to do Rozek out as a opener. And then, so if I can then get 2 innings out of Rozek, who has 45 stamina, I can kind of get him through the lineup once. I can go to Ryan, have him go through the lineup twice, and hopefully not then completely gas him at that point. Because he won't be... If I throw him tomorrow, this will not be 100% rest status. So that's definitely an interesting question. So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to play the games off screen, and I will be back with you shortly. And we're back after a crazy 5-game series with the Houston Astros. Didn't get off to a great start to the series. McCullers just shut us down in game 1. We did get a little bit off Presley to potentially get a comeback, but Winder was okay at the 4 walks. Wasn't great. Cano was good. Thielbar was okay again for us, but the bats just really weren't there in game 1. Just a close game, really not the type of game I was expecting to see much of in this series, but we do lose game 1 and gave me concerns about dealing with McCullers because I really felt like coming into this series we probably needed to win 1 against him. We were going to get him twice. He was their ace. Not a good start. Game 2 was also not great. And it definitely made me change some plans because Syndergaard was awful. 7 hits and 5 runs in 2 innings, and then we pretty much had Maeda and Archer kind of just play mop-up duty of even when we thought that we maybe had a chance in the 4th inning, or Kepler hit a 3-run bomb. There just wasn't enough. Like Kepler did a lot of work in this series. I mean, he knocks in all 5 of the runs, but gets counterbalanced by 2 home runs from Jake Myers, who was a massive problem for me in this series. Honestly, for a guy that looks like a league average bat, I mean, he was a problem for me. This was him and Kyle Tucker, who I could not get out Kyle Tucker until game 5, honestly. I mean, like 2 hits in the first 4 games, and he was a problem for me. Where it got to the point, and this is really about the point in the series where I started kind of telling myself this, of kind of looking at the problem of kind of this first part of the lineup was I was kind of trying to play around Tucker a little bit, of try to play and basically be willing to deal with the potential bad matchups for Altuve, um, or kind of trying to do that. But I just realized, okay, Tucker's gonna hit whoever I throw, so I need to play around the other people. Um, Garcia, I couldn't touch. We got the 3-run homer from Kepler in the fourth, and that was really all that we could do to him. They brought in Odorizzi, I think, just as basically mop up duty in the ninth. Um, then after we hit, Kepler hits a home run off of Odorizzi in the ninth. They just say, nah, we're just going to bring in Presley, and he just strikes out Mancini to ends the game. So we're down 2-0 coming back home to Target Field. And our bats have kind of started to come alive at that point. We faced the lefty in Framber Valdez, and we did exactly to him what we did to Sale and Paxton in the last series, which was just mash. Yet we scored 4 runs in the first, and even when they scored 2 more in the third off of Paddock, we answer in the fourth. They score the 2 runs in the 5th inning, but then we just pretty much end the game there off of Brian Abreu, with a lot of doubles. And our bullpen comes in and shuts the door this time, of only 1 hit over the last 4 innings. I do think I left in Paddock a little too long in this game. I probably should have pulled him in the 5th to potentially avoid giving up those 2 runs. We did go to starting Kyle Garlick in this game over Isbell against the lefty, because Isbell had struggled in the first 2 games, didn't have a single hit. So we kind of played the matchups a little bit of using Garlick against the lefty and playing Kepler in center. And it works out well for us here. But I mean, again, our starting pitching just continues to be problematic. I think that 37 might even be the highest game score. No, Winder actually had slightly higher at 41, going 3 1/3 innings. And then game 4 was another good game for us, really off the strength of just that 1 inning, with Gio Urshela hitting the massive home run. Or just the WPA on this has got to be plus. I mean, this is probably about 60%, to me being 60% to win. I mean, 0.2 WPA with just that 1 swing of the bat was massive. And Polanco continuing to hit well, Kepler continuing to hit well. She's up to 12 RBIs for the playoffs at this point. The Rozek-Ryan combo works pretty well for us in this one. And then the bullpen shuts it down. Duran got himself into some trouble. This is the first time we used him. I do think potentially we made a mistake by not going to him in game 1, of probably at the point where we gave up that run in the 7th. We probably should have gone to him and potentially tried to avoid losing that game, but really this was the first time that I think we were really in a situation to be using him. Yeah, he comes in, and then at the point where he had the 18 pitches, and this being game 3, I go to Cano in the 9th here because we have the 5-run lead instead of the 4. I do think if it's 4, I probably stay with Duran, but we're able to go to Cano, who has been good. And that gives us then the day off, going back to Houston now for game 5, which was again, crazy game. We get 3 right away in the first inning and try to give ourselves basically that chance to actually do some damage to McCullers. We do give up the 1 right back away. I believe that was off of the home run comes later. Um, but we give them back up. We take that 4-1 lead. We knock out Lance McCullers in the third inning, which is just massive um, for us. But then we give up a 3-run home run or a 2-run home run to Gurriel after giving up a run at that point, and that kind of puts me in a situation that I don't love. I pretty much the way that I play this game was kind of making sure that I had fresh arms dealing with kind of these first 5 guys. And Bregman does punish me for it in this game, but I didn't want to lose to the first 5 in this game. So we let Winder go the 4th to kind of get the bottom of their order out. And I think what happens there is then he gets me kind of through Myers. I go to the lefty to try to get Brantley Altuve Tucker. We get 2 of them. This is the first game where Tucker doesn't get 2 hits off of us. And then I go to a righty to get Gurriel. And then Bregman comes out and punishes me in the 6th of staying with Cotton to start that inning. Then we go to Duran, gives up another home run to Bregman. But luckily that's after we get 3 more in the 7th off of Art Warren, who was a guy I was scared of, honestly, after how good he was for Houston this year. But he only shows up in the 1 game, and we knock him around, which is really big for us. To get that 8-run or the 8-5 lead. And then I make the call because I think we're at the bottom of the lineup going into the 9th to go to Cano, who just, again, I mean, he hasn't given up a run yet in his 3 appearances. He goes 4 2/3. Was massive out of the bullpen for me against Houston. But the series MVP is Max Kepler for the ALCS. Yeah, I mean, 3 home runs, even though 2 of them are in losing efforts. Had a big home run for me in this game as well. Kirilloff's starting to put it back together. He struggled at the start of this series. I think even in this game, I think the 1 hit was at the end of it. I think he started the series 0 for 7, but then has started to turn it back around. And now the big news for us going into the Toronto series is the return of Byron Buxton, where hopefully he can be... I'm going to change this. I'm going to have him bat 5th there. Hopefully he can be more offensively than Isbell, who's been like okay. I mean, 286 isn't bad, but really that's kind of these last 2 games. So, yeah. And, I mean, Buxton was off to just that incredible start. But, again, coming off the injury, there's definitely some questions, but this is a ALCS. You go with your studs and hope for the best. As far as Toronto, I'm scared. I don't expect to win this series. I'm just going to be very blunt with this. Number 2 in runs scored, number 1 in runs allowed, best starters in the league. If we can get through the starters, I think we have a chance. The bullpen doesn't scare me. I mean, you can tell the 13th in bullpen ERA. That's just a thing I think we can deal with. One thing to note now that I'm looking at their lineups is it's almost exclusively right-handed batters that they have on their team. They do have 2 lefties in DJ Stewart and Kevin Biggio, who I'm almost a little surprised they aren't starting. But because I mean, just look at these OPS pluses. 1, 2. Is this no split? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 above league average hitters that they're playing, and Matt Chapman is still scary, even though he's really had a very bad year. And wasn't great against Kansas City, who they beat. That's concerning. And I mean, even and then the ninth is a 98 OPS plus. Like this lineup is very scary. Vlad is back and is a problem. I mean, just this lineup, like I'm probably gonna need to score 7 or 8 runs to win games in this series. And like our offense can do that. Like we were the one team that scored more runs than them in the regular season. So like our offense can do it. We get Buxton back. But I'm concerned about our pitching. It was not good against Houston, especially from our starters. And we're gonna need them to get me through 6 innings probably. And that's gonna be concerning. I don't have a lot of faith in winning this series. Let's take a quick look at the rest of the playoff trees. There's some interesting stuff here. First off, Kansas City beating the Yankees in the wild card game is great, and I'm very amused by the Yankees losing to the Royals. That I love it. Over here, though, is some weird stuff. So we did have 4 teams from the NL East make the playoffs. That's crazy. I mean, the Marlins were awful. Wow. The NL was absurd this year. I haven't looked at this yet. You only had the 6 teams above 500 in the entire National League. So yeah, so you have 4 teams from the NL East making the playoffs. Yeah, that's what everybody had going into the year. Totally. And now we have the Phillies versus the Nationals in the NLCS. Just wow. Like, what is going on over here? So the Phillies are a offense first team. Yeah, nothing super weird here. I do remember they made this trade for Luis Garcia. Or no, who did they? No, I don't know. Bryce Harper looks like he had a very, very good year. 6 WAR, 40 homers. Kyle Schwarber doing his mashing home runs thing. Muto being Royal Muto. Let's look at the Nationals. This is High Juan Soto. 8.6 WAR, 45 home runs. That's a 1100 OPS plus, like OPS for Juan Soto this year. What? Okay. Also Adam Duvall hitting 38 home runs and being a 112 OPS player. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's between the 2 of them. Interesting. This is a weird. Let me look at what is this trade. Atlanta receives Joe Ross for Adam Duvall and this Jesse Franklin guy. Looks pretty good. Looks like he had a pretty good year. Wow, that... I don't understand this trade for Atlanta at all. I mean, this guy looks like he was good. $3 million, free agent at the end of the year. But they give up Duvall and I mean they gave up basically 2 major starting players for Joe Ross, which I guess like isn't terrible. But I mean, it looks like I'm guessing it was a bet on Duvall to I mean, he was only league average for them and he was better for Washington. Yeah, wow. Pitching is awful. I mean, this series, a lot of runs are going to get scored. That's for sure. I mean, their best starter by ERA is... Oh, Michael Pineda they traded for, I guess, at the deadline. Along with Joey Wentz. Left-hander. For this guy who looks like nothing. Was having a good year in rookie ball for them. Yeah, so I mean, Washington's pitching is terrible, but so is Philadelphia's. So that's interesting. Nelson Cruz hitting 24 home runs. Josh Bell looks like he had a pretty good year. Ryan McMahon. Oh, this was one of those like very beginning of the year trades. Yeah, this is the trade I was thinking of where they traded Luis Garcia away, who was pretty decent for Colorado, it looks like. I mean, is going to be a pretty good player. Well as Lane Thomas. It's like didn't. No, looks like he played some for them. Kind of split time between majors and the minors to get Ryan McMahon, who was average, good defensively though. On a pretty big contract. Wow, I don't know how those series were both. And like the crazy thing is like Washington swept Atlanta. It was a 100-win team. And they're bad. Like, let me look at this series. Division series, Washington versus Atlanta. 7-1, 4-2, 13-6. That's crazy. Just wow. All right. Well, that's a thing that happened, I guess. We will play Toronto, and I will be back once this series is over as well. See you in a bit. And we're back again for the last part of this playoffs update, where we fall in the ALCS in a heartbreaking 7-game series against Toronto, where the home team won all 7 of the games. We got off to not a great start, losing this first one, but really the biggest part of this is the Noah Syndergaard injury that happens in this game. Has bone chips in his elbows, out for 6 to 7 months from October. So really what we're looking at this point is that means he's not back until May or June. I've talked a couple of times about offering him an extension to bring him back, especially with potential money situations. But I mean, 30 years old. Is he fragile as is? I'm not sure with all of this stuff. But he's had some injuries. And I mean, he'll be almost 31 at the point where he's coming back from this injury. It's really hard to justify that 4-year. This could be something where I offer him a 1-year deal with a team option on it. But that hurts for moving forward with just adding to the pitching problems. But also definitely created problems for us in the series of losing the best pitcher on your staff probably in game 1, meaning you can't pitch him again. And that hurt. I mean, that was definitely the biggest part of the loss. I mean, you can see here, this is really what kills us in this series. You can kind of see already that, so there's 2 home runs in game 1. We'll keep a running track of how many home runs we gave up. Vlad didn't actually have a hit in this first game. That doesn't stay. That does not stay true. I promise you that. Vlad was a problem. Then we go 5-0 here. Just nothing against Barrios whatsoever. Paddock was, okay, not great, not terrible. Our bullpen does pretty well, but again, you can see just home runs. These are all off. 4 of them off Paddock, 1 off Cano as well. Vlad's first of the series, first of a lot. So that puts us up to 7 home runs allowed in 2 games now. And the offense just couldn't really get anything going. We got some hits. putting 3 from Trey Mancini, had our only extra base hit of the game. Um, but yeah, I mean, just nothing. Weren't able to string anything together. The power wasn't there in Toronto for us at all. I mean, only scoring 2 runs in the first 2 games after scoring a ton of runs against Houston. Really, only this first game was our only game below 5. To score 2 in 2 games, not off, didn't have me very optimistic. I was very worried about getting swept at this point. But then we come back home, and the home cooking was good for us. 7 runs in the first 2 innings, knocked Alek Manoah around. Joe Ryan was fine. Cotton has definitely created some question marks for me in the playoffs. Even though he was pretty good during the regular season, he is 31, is now arbitration eligible, meaning there's definitely a world in which we just non-tender him. 1.5 isn't a ton, so maybe we keep him around, but he did not have a good playoffs at all. I mean, we got home runs from Polanco, Jeffers. Jeffers has had a pretty decent playoff, even though pretty much his only hits were home runs. But he was okay. Hunt was okay. Nothing was really decided in that battle. Again, here's 2 more home runs that we allow even in this win, bringing us to a total of 9, I believe. I'll double check this. This is 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I mean, in this last game, it was just 5 solo home runs that we allowed. That was all the runs. So that's up to 9 home runs we've given up at this point. Let's see. This is their first game where they score runs in a way that isn't just hit a home run. Yeah, so that's 9 home runs we've allowed at that point. Then 13-2 here, where we just mash them again. This is Vlad hits 2 more home runs, so we're up to 11 home runs that we've now allowed in 4 games. The series is tied at 2 apiece here. Really nice start from Josh Winder. Definitely is making me want to keep him in the rotation for next year. He was about league average for me during the regular season, but I mean, a start like that in a game that really was something that we had to win. Like, this wasn't I mean, yeah, the offense obviously mashes and we win the game, even if he doesn't have a good start. But if we scored, like, we didn't need to do a lot because Winder was very good. We just happened to also score a ton of runs to win the game. Kirilloff homers, Correa homers, Blanco, Mancini. Mancini had himself a really good playoff run, honestly. And it's not a 0% chance, I think, that I do actually hold on to this team option. I still don't think it's super likely, but depending on how some other things go, it certainly is an option. Yeah, Hunt's not super great in the playoffs. He did have a good game 7 though. But yeah, so game 4, Bats continuing to come alive, even with giving up the 2 more home runs in that game. And then game 5 was crazy, where this is really where I was worried about losing Syndergaard. After that injury, I didn't feel like I had a better option than Kenta Maeda to start this game because he was decent relief. I don't super trust Chris Archer, so I went with Maeda. It looked like a terrible decision the start of this game. Multiple home runs. I mean, you could see there's 3 home runs in the first inning. Total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I believe brings us to 16 home runs that we've now allowed through 5 games to Toronto, which is just absurd. But then we just slowly and steadily clawed our way back into the game. I mean, this is just a crazy WPA graph Jorge Polanco had a massive game for us. In the bottom of our order, I mean, it's a lot of one hit, other than the really big 3-hit game from Blake Hunt. But a lot of these hits were in the eighth inning. Um, and this was just full on. This is Jordan Romano. This is the best pitcher, probably the best guy out of their bullpen, and we got to him um, in this game, and that was really big for us to be able to come back and give us the 3-2 series lead, going back to Toronto. This I don't know how much this actually ended up being a big problem for us. We're past the point now where this injury luckily was not a injury where he can't play. Should show up here, yeah. So he sprained his ankle, which isn't obviously not great. But when I looked, even though it says effect substantial, let me see if I can find something to kind of show what I am at here. Let's see. Okay, yeah, it only shows it on day-to-days, so it's hard. Let me see if does Toronto have anybody who's... Okay, perfect. So in here, it says influences hitting, influences running, influences throwing. So for Kepler, what that sprained ankle said was nothing for hitting, moderate throwing, moderate running. So what I then did for Game 6 and Game 7 was I played... I DH'd Max Kepler. I played Kyle Isbell in right. I moved Mancini to first and Miranda to third because Gio Urshela just has not done anything in the playoffs. Mancini's hit super well. Miranda's hit super well. Kepler's been a monster. Like I did all of that to keep Kepler's bat in the lineup, and it was very worth it. Even though we didn't win either of those two games, I feel good about that management decision of how I handled it. This was just another game where just the starting pitching kind of was the story of Paddock just put us in a hole that we just couldn't climb our way out of. And I was very worried about, because I knew Game 7 was the next day, the fact that we weren't ahead at any point in the game, and we were pretty much always down a couple of runs, made me not want to go to Duran to try to stem the bleeding or anything like that. And maybe that was a mistake on my end of going with some... I mean, you can kind of see, this is the one time I used Thielbar in this series, which obviously is nothing about him. He was good against Houston. But the Toronto lineup is all righties. Even against right-handed pitching, their lineup is entirely righties with almost exclusively better splits against lefties. So that made it hard for me to justify using Thielbar at any point during this series. And yeah, Cody Stashak actually did get to make an appearance in the playoffs, who was my call up after Syndergaard's injury, because I didn't have a starter that was eligible, and I don't think even if he was eligible, I would have called up Blazovic to start that Game 5 for me over Maeda anyway. We did get to Barrios in this game, but just didn't matter. Again, home runs. Add to our counts. We're at 16 coming into this. There's 4 more we give up to get to 20. Alejandro Kirk just murders us in this game to 6 RBIs. And then we went to Game 7, and we had a lead going into the 7th, and it just was the game just comes down to stud against stud. Bases loaded, 2 outs. Duran against Guerrero, and Guerrero won. Hits the grand slam. That's the deciding difference in the game. And I don't regret how I played this game at all. I mean, this was Joe Ryan pitched well, and then this is my two best pitchers out of my bullpen, and Yenny Cano and Joan Duran. Like I feel good about how I played the game, but Vlad was just better. They hit two more home runs for a total of 22 home runs that my pitching staff allowed in this 7-game series. I don't really know what else to say other than that about this series. Our bats were inconsistent, unfortunately, but give up 22 home runs in a 7-game series, and you don't really deserve to win it, in my personal opinion. Yeah, so then I remember that we then looked a little bit ago at the NL, and we're like, okay, there's just neither of these teams are good. I felt decent about my odds in a World Series, and I thought Toronto would smash either of them. Well, they start simming. Toronto wins game 1. I'm like, okay, that sounds about right. Then Philly just wins 4 in a row, and the Philadelphia Phillies win the World Series in 2022. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. Like, I mean, the pitching staff, I mean, Ranger Suarez was pretty good, but, like, bullpen was underwhelming. I mean, I guess it's just they've got a couple of guys that look like they were pretty good, and if they were able to rely just on them in the playoffs, in the World Series, let's see. And Wheeler wasn't great. Let's see if we can. Let's take a look at these games. I haven't actually looked at these yet, so this will be interesting. So Toronto wins game 1, 6-4. They do hit 2 more home runs. Gaussman's really good. Romano getting hit up again. I mean, he struggled in the playoffs. Really. I mean, this was a good start, or this was the good outing against us, but, like, we got to him pretty hard in a game. Philly, it looks like, got to him twice. And yeah, so they do win this game. Biggio, looks like, is kind of the hero of that one. Then 12-2, just kind of mashing around Barrios, and then Ross Stripling, it looks like they then used. Aaron Nola was really good. Sean Armstrong was nothing, and Greg Holland, I guess, had a pretty decent year for them. Hoskins homers, Herrera homers, Bryce Harper hits 2 home runs. Pretty easy win for Philly. 4-1. Ranger Suarez goes 4 1/3, and then the bullpen was just untouchable. Herrera looks like hitting a big 3-run homer to win that game. Then 11-4, another big bat game from Philly. Schwarber hits a homer. Harper hits another homer. Oh, Yu Darvish was in Philadelphia. So the Padres did end up trading him. He looks like pretty good. Just very good in the playoffs here. Did they, like, not use him in the Dodgers series? That's really interesting. Wonder if there was, like, an injury of some kind. No, that's really weird. But yeah, I mean, a really good outing from him there, where looks like, yeah, he gave up probably a 3-run homer in the 8th, yeah, to Bichette. So that was 8 innings of, like, 7+ innings of 1-run ball from Darvish, and then bats were massive. Only 1 home run from Toronto there, and then 5-4. Oh wow, they walked him off to win the game. Royce Hoskins walks him off against Romero. Yeah, I mean, Romero really let Toronto down in the playoffs, which is wild. So Philadelphia Phillies win the 2022 World Series. How I bet that if you play out a lot of out of the park 23, I don't think the Phillies are winning a whole lot of year one World Series titles. They where did they finish in the division? They're third in the division, 86 wins. Um, Pitching staff is terrible, bullpen's terrible, but they figured it out in the playoffs and they got hot when it counted. So, congratulations to the Phillies, your 2022 World Series champions. And then we will go into dealing with a lot of decisions to be made for the Minnesota Twins in the next episode. See, option year 1, 2, 3, 4 potential options. Completely unsurprising, Correa opts out, so we have to make a decision there. Make a decision on Syndergaard, and then kind of after all of those decisions, we have to look at arbitration, have to decide what we're going to do with the team. So kind of some of that stuff will be the next episode of dealing with all these options, looking at arbitration, coming up with a general plan for the team in the next episode, which is, I think a lot of the most fun about Out of the Park is going to be these next couple of episodes, is kind of plotting out your off seasons, trying to figure out what things you need to do. I'm excited to reveal this to you guys in the next one. I'm gonna hover it and I'm gonna tell you that's something I'm excited about. But I'm gonna leave that as a little fun cliffhanger here. So have a good rest of your day, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.